Hi students, welcome to the BYJU'S Hindu News Analysis for 12th of August 2018. So let's get started. So let's look into the first article. So the first article says tight-fisted neighbor, Indian aid to SAARC nations falls. So what exactly is the context? So the context here says India's financial assistance to SAARC neighbors declined considerably in the past 5 years. So when we look into the statistics, what it clearly says is, according to the figures, the grant assistance that has been provided to the neighboring countries actually fell from 5,928.6 crores for 2013 and 14 to 3,483.6 crores for the year 2017-18 for the regions of Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Maldives, Nepal and Sri Lanka combined. So what we need to consider is that there has been a significant drop in terms of the amount that has been given to the neighboring countries in terms of the money for their personal improvement. So what we need to understand is there has been drop in all the regions. So when we look into the graph, what it clearly says is, with respect to Afghanistan there has been a decline. With respect to Nepal, which was initially at about 381.37 crores, it has fallen to 376.62 crores. Same way with Sri Lanka, it has seen a drop, and then it is Bangladesh the same way, and with Bhutan also there has been a drop with respect to the assistance provided. But with respect to Maldives, it is the only country which has seen an increase from 9.67 crores to actually 909.25 crores. So what exactly we will be looking and understanding with respect to this article is, why is that only Maldives has seen an increase with respect to the financial assistance provided by India, and how is that there has been a decline with respect to the other countries. So once we consider the general assistance figures, what we will have to understand is that this will not actually include the lines of credit. So there is an assistance that is provided, but the credit amount that is being given to all these countries has not been included in this particular agreement. That is why we actually see this decline with respect to the other countries. And what also needs to be understood is there are number of projects that have been taken in the neighborhood, and all these projects are actually completed ones. But with respect to the Maldives, it's not the same way. So when we consider Maldives, there are number of projects that India has actually initiated. One is with respect to the police academy, or the coastal radar project, or the refit of the MNDF ship Huravi. So all these projects are currently being undertaken, and because it is currently being undertaken, so there needs a lot of financial assistance, and that is why India is providing, and that is why there is an increase with respect to the Maldives. But with respect to the other countries, what is happening is India has actually completed a number of projects. So because they have actually completed the number of projects, and at the same time the line of credit is not considered with respect to these nations apart from Maldives, that is why there you actually see there is a decline with respect to this particular project. So this is all we will have to understand. This is just an informational article, so this is all we will have to understand. Moving ahead, we will be discussing any updates with respect to SAARC as well. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says more assembly seats for Sikkim. So let's look into the context. So the context here clearly says the Home Ministry has moved to the Union Cabinet to increase the number of seats in the Sikkim Assembly from 32 to 40. So what exactly is the main reason as to why there has to be an increase in the seats? One of the main reasons as to why there has to be an increase in the seats is because we need to accommodate certain scheduled tribes, and that is the Limbo as well as the Tamang. So in order to make sure that this particular community, Limbo and Tamang, are actually placed in the assembly, that is why this initiation has been taken. So one of the major reasons is that these scheduled tribes that are located in the region of Sikkim are not adequately represented. In order to make sure that these people are also adequately represented in the Sikkim assembly, that's why this proposal has been initiated. So what the Limbo as well as the Tamang community actually say is they have actually deprived of the political rights as well as some of the fundamental rights, and only when there is all the political rights that is given to a particular tribe or a particular organization, that is when it will be able to speak for itself. So in order to make sure that all these rights are actually provided to these communities, that is why this particular move has been initiated. At the same time, what we also need to realize is that there has been an increase from 32 to 40. So there will be 8 seats seats that will be added. So of the 8 seats, 5 seats will be reserved for this particular community. So apart from this, there is also about the readjustment of the seats. So what does it say? It says that Sikkim has 12 seats reserved for the Bhutias and Lepchas. So this is not because they are a scheduled tribe, but as a sequel to a political agreement in 1973 between the government of India and the former king of Sikkim and the political parties. And apart from this, it goes on to say, by the Delimitation Act of 2002, the number of seats in an assembly can be adjusted only on the basis of census after 2026. The second schedule of the Representation of the People Act 1950 and Section 5A of the Representation Act of the People 1951 has been amended to exchange the assembly strength. So we will be looking into this, particularly this issue in detail once again, but as of now, because it has just gone with the Union Cabinet, the Union Cabinet will be discussing once again as to should be given it or not. So we will be discussing it once again, but let's have a basic framework of what exactly the different tribes are right now. So what we need to know is this Limbu is actually a Kirati people who are indigenous and native to their homeland Himalayas, hills, mountainous and plains regions. So the Tamang actually becomes to the Tibeto-Burmo ethnic group. So these, the tribal group, actually belong to the region of Sikkim. So this can be a potential question for your prelims examination. So who are the Bhutias here? They are commonly people of Tibetan ancestry who speak Lohopo or Sikkimese, a Tibetan dialect. So the Bhutias are spread out over Nepal, Bhutan and in the northern West Bengal, especially in the towns of Kalimpong and Darjeeling. So the Bhutias are recognized as scheduled tribes in the state of Sikkim, West Bengal as well as Tripura. So kindly remember, all these scheduled tribes are a part of Sikkim. So next we are speaking about the Lepchas. So they are among the indigenous people of the Sikkim. So they have a particular festival called as Tendong Lo Rumphut, which actually means a prayer of the Tendong mountain. So this is a festival of the Lepcha people of the eastern Nepal and northeast India. This festival usually occurs in the month of August. So as per the Lepcha community, it was believed that entire tribe was actually saved from 40 days of rains deluge caused by the continuous rain which drowned the entire mile length the modern day Sikkim. So what exactly happens during this festival? So people actually make a mountain in the facade of their homes and worship it. It is exclusively made of 9 stones and the people dance and sing wearing masks to get the blessings of the Almighty in order to make sure and thank the God that for saving them during this particular deluge of rains for almost 40 days during days and nights. That is why they actually make a particular mold of a mountain and they actually thank the God for actually saving them, is what this festival all about. But we will be discussing this article once again once the cabinet actually gives this particular resolution passed. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says North Karnataka reeling under neglect. So what exactly is this article all about? So when we look into the context, it will realize that 13 districts of North Karnataka recently raised a fresh cry for a separate state, pointing out that Chief Minister H.D. Kumaraswamy budgetary allocation favored only the southern districts. So this is a cry for a separate state. So what we will have to understand is it is not only this region, there have been number of other statehood. So what exactly are the different separate statehood demands elsewhere? One is with respect to the Harit Pradesh, then you have Bodoland, then you have Goraklan in West Bengal, then Purvanchal in Uttar Pradesh, then Vidarbha in Maharashtra, Mithilanchal in Bihar. So there have been number of regions which is actually asking for statehood. One, basically because they are not able to develop and because they actually feel that there is certain political class which is actually ignoring them and there is lot of development that needs to be done and they are deprived of the development. And that is why majority of these regions and the people in this particular region actually say that they want a separate region. And one of the things that we will also have to understand is Andhra Pradesh was also divided into Andhra Pradesh as well as Telangana explicitly on the same basis of development, and that is why these are the other regions which are similarly asking for the same thing. So what we will have to understand is why exactly is this demand that is happening in the North Karnataka region. So once we understand what are the reasons of the backwardness. So one of the basic things that we will have to understand with respect to this is the historical neglect. So what do we mean by historical neglect? Let's say for example in northern Karnataka there were certain regions which were a part of the Hyderabad region, that is it was under the control of the Nizam. So there were certain other parts which were a part of the Bombay presidency. So what exactly happened was this region which was under the region of Bombay, and there was a region that was occupied in the region Nizam's Hyderabad. So these regions were not a part of the healthy and the prosperous Mysore region, which is a part of South Karnataka. So because these regions were a part of some other state, and because these people were not actually considered in a healthy way than the other people, that is why, because of the historical negligence that has happened both in the Bombay province as well as in the Nizam's Hyderabad, this region is not developed. At the same time, then these people had a linguistic basis, right? Because they used to speak Kannada. What exactly happened? These people were actually merged with the region of Mysore. So the northern Karnataka part, which was not initially the part of Mysore, so this part was initially called as Mysore, and this was very healthy and it was very prosperous. But because these regions were actually speaking Kannada, and because on the basis of the linguistic provision, this region was actually merged with the prosperous Mysore region. So coupled with the apathy after the unification of Karnataka, I mean what exactly happened post the unification was there were certain people who were not actually ready to actually accept northern Karnataka people to be a part of the southern Karnataka, because southern Karnataka was actually prosperous and this was under the administration of the Maharaja. So what exactly happened was there were certain people still obstructing this particular fold of people to come and join the Mysore region, simply because they were comparatively not that developed as the southern region, and there were few divans who were also working with the Maharajas who were not actually happy with this particular unification, simply because they felt that the prosperous region have to give a lot of funding to the northern region, and that is why they were again not happy. So the two major reasons is, one is the historical neglect, the other one is the apathy after the unification. The apathy after unification is because they felt that this was a region which was completely underdeveloped, and once we becomes a part of the Mysore region, the prosperous Mysore region, that is the southern part of Karnataka, have to give a lot of money and it has to spend a lot of money on the development of northern Karnataka, and that is why these people were not spending enough initially. So these are the two major regions. So apart from this, what we also need to realize is, we know for the fact that Kaveri issue is one of the burning issues when it comes to the southern region of Karnataka. So there is lot of voice that is being given to Kaveri issue, but this is not the same way when it comes to Krishna issue. So one of the other regions is, we know for the fact that there are number of rivers that flow in the northern Karnataka, like the Tungabhadra, the Krishna and so on. But what is happening is, the voice is not provided to the Krishna issue like the same voice as to how the Kaveri issue is being voiced. So that's the third important thing that we have to understand. So the third important point is, Kaveri is given all the important issue and the voice from the government of Karnataka, but the same voice and the same amount of pressure is not being built up on the same with respect to the river Krishna. And the most important point is also, there has been a long pending interstate Mahadevi river row, and this has also not been solved with respect to the Goa issue. So these are some of the reasons as to why the backwardness of this North Karnataka has been there. So one of the things that we have to understand is with respect to the facts. So what are the facts that it says? So there are about 13 districts that are further categorized into Hyderabad Karnataka as well as Bombay Karnataka. So what we also need to know is that this Bombay Karnataka is comparatively better off than the Hyderabad Karnataka. So the identification of the two districts of the region, Bidar and Kalaburgi, earlier known as Gulbarga, as the poorest districts in the country in the National Sample Survey in 2005, and their subsequent inclusion in the Food for Work program are indicative of the state of affairs. So once we realize what this factual data says, all those districts which are there with respect to the northern Karnataka are completely underdeveloped, and because they are underdeveloped, they do not even have the basic amenities for their sustenance. So because of all these problems and because of all the underdevelopment that is there in northern Karnataka, what exactly happened happened was the government actually appointed a committee, and this committee was appointed in the year 2000, and this committee was called as the Nanjundappa committee. So what exactly happened was in 2000 Nanjundappa committee was actually appointed. So what the Nanjundappa committee was actually told was to study the disparities that have been happening in this particular area, bring about a certain appropriate strategy, give about all the statistical data, and give us how we will have to channelize the energy so that this region actually becomes a zone of development. So the SM Krishna government actually appointed the Nanjundappa committee and asked them to provide all the requisite strategy so that this region also becomes developed. So after the exhaustive study that this particular committee conducted, what they actually told was that they actually divided them into three zones. One is the most backward region, and then it was more backward region, and then what it categorized was as the backward region. Amongst this, what we need to realize is there are about 39 taluks which are actually the most backward. So in this 39 taluks that are most backward in the region of Karnataka, at least 26 of the 7 districts happen to come under the North Karnataka. So even the statistics clearly says that 26 taluks out of this particular most backward districts fall in the region of North Karnataka. So there were certain recommendations. So these recommendations actually came up from the Nanjundappa committee. So they actually said that you will have to provide a special developmental plan of about 16,000 crores for over 8 years, and it further said that you will have to provide a 60:40 ratio in favor of the northern region as a basis for additional resource allocation. However, what we need to understand is despite of this particular recommendation, the implementation has been very wrong and it has not worked out. So what does it say? It says as per the official data, 13,565 crores of the 16,000 crore recommended by the Nanjundappa committee has been spent between 2006-7 and 14. However, development is hardly palpable. So in spite of the recommendation that has been given up by the Nanjundappa committee, what has exactly happened is there is not much of development that we see in this particular area. So what else the constitutional mandate says? So when we look into the constitutional mandate, what is already done is that the constitution has already given a special status to the Hyderabad Karnataka region under the Article 371J. So in spite of providing the constitutional status under 371J, there has been a problem. That is, the employment opportunities in this area, though there is existing, people are not coming down. And the other point is, in spite of all this, there has been a lot of vacant seats that has been left over in this particular area, and there is not much of development that is happening. So what exactly is the way forward? So what we need to realize is the government always works in a program called as what is called as placebo governance. So kindly remember this term, and this you can use it in your mains answer writing or whenever you are quoting a particular thing, or this can also be called as lollipop politics, as Shekhar Gupta says. So what exactly is the main problem? So what exactly happens during a particular government is they just want to appease the people. So they just want to make sure that the people actually are stopping from this particular agitation for that particular moment. So what usually happens is when any problem actually surfaces, they do not actually cause this particular problem, or they do not look at the root cause of this particular problem, but they look at only symptoms. They address only the symptoms, but they do not look at the root cause. So what we need to understand, and what this placebo governance basically says, is that the government, in case there is a particular problem, it does not address that particular problem. It also knows for the fact that in case this particular step is taken, it will not completely remove this particular problem, and it will still go about increasing this particular problem without understanding the outcome of this particular problem. Let's say, for example, what exactly happens. Let's take a simple example of corruption. So there was Anna Hazare movement that was happening, and this Anna Hazare movement, all that it was saying is there is large scale corruption that is there in the country, and this has to be stopped. So what did the government do? In order to appease the people, it came up with a particular bill. Is that bill being implemented right now? Not exactly. All that they do is, in order to appease the people, in order to make sure that the people are not agitating more after a particular period, the government immediately releases a bill and it placates a particular ordinance after ordinance. But instead, is it turning into an act? How well is the implementation? This is not being worked about. Instead, what is happening is the government actually immediately releases, so that all the agitation that is happening in the society, all those things that are surfacing in the society, actually comes down for that moment. But it is is not actually looking at the root cause of this particular issue. So what TSR Subramaniam says is, Cabinet Secretary who recently passed away, says is, the government is very good at all these things. Instead of addressing the root cause, what it is basically doing is, it is just giving them certain laws, and these laws, they know for the fact that it will not fully root out the problem, but it will just address the symptoms. So this particular model of the government is called as the placebo government, and the same word that you can also use is the lollipop politics, which is actually named by Shekhar Gupta. So all the placebo governance or the lollipop politics says is that there are few politicians or the government in that particular control who actually not address a particular problem. They do not have a political will to address the problem, but just to make sure that the problem is actually ebbed at only that particular moment, they release a particular bill, they release a particular act, but the implementation is not fully implemented. Instead, what exactly happens in this particular area is that there is partial implementation, and because there is partial implementation, there is only addressing of that particular issue for that minimal period, but it is not going to have an impact at the longer duration. So it is short-term goals that they want to achieve rather than the long-term desires or ambitions for the state. Similarly, in Karnataka, what is exactly happening is the major problem is the political will. In spite of all the money that has been released, the political will is not there, and that is why there is no development of this particular area. So what exactly can be taken as a conclusion bit? So one of the basic things that we need to understand is the need of the hour for this particular region is that we need to provide education to the people in the backward areas and all the development that needs to happen. There are number of organizations and number of industries, and all these industries have to be moved towards the northern Karnataka part. So once there is industrial development, and once we are able to provide better governance, not the placebo governance, not the words, but it is the actions that is required. So if you are able to provide the actions and not only words, then we will be able to provide better governance. And there are number of vacant seats that are laying up in this particular area, right? All the employment opportunities that is currently laying vacant, it has to be filled. And at the same time, the most important point is there is participatory approach that is required. So any region for that matter, in case it has to develop, what needs to be provided is the motivation for the people. So in case the people are actually motivated to have a keen watch on the developmental models that have been planted in this particular region, and if people are actually making sure that there is no wasteful expenditure or pilferage in this particular area, but instead all the funds that are diverted towards those areas that they want the development. That is, there is participatory approach that is happening, and when there is participatory approach that is happening, what we will have is a developmental model rather than just the fake promises of placebo governance or what is called as the lollipop politics. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says a note to the mothers. So what exactly is this all about? So we will be discussing in detail about the breastfeeding. So important points that we will have to understand is the World Health Organization also released a recent report with respect to the breastfeeding. Let's understand everything with respect to the breastfeeding. So the point is, there was a new report that was released by the UNICEF and the World Health Organization during the World Breastfeeding Week. So the breastfeeding week happens from August 1 to August 7. So this World Breastfeeding Week is celebrated every year to encourage breastfeeding as well as improve the health of the babies around the world. So this actually commemorates the Innocenti Declaration, which was actually signed in August 1990 by government policymakers, the World Health Organization, the UNICEF and other organizations to protect, promote and support breastfeeding. So kindly remember this Innocenti Declaration. So the Innocenti Declaration is something to do with the breastfeeding. So what exactly does the report say? So India, according to it, holds a ranking of 56 according to it. So what exactly is the global scenario? So when we look into the facts, what it says is most of the world's newborns are actually left waiting for too long to start breastfeeding. In 2017, an estimated 78 million newborns across the world had to wait for more than 1 hour to be put on breast. This means that only 2 in 5 children were put on breast within first hour of their lives. So apart from this, what exactly are the common problems? So when we look into the common problems, what it says is feeding newborns food or drinks including formulae, discarding the colostrum, elders feeding the baby honey water, sugar syrup and so on. These are the common problems that are seen. So what exactly do we have to understand with respect to this article is, first let us start off with with what exactly is the colostrum. So what we need to understand is colostrum is actually that first breastfeed that should be given to the baby. So it is thick and yellowish in color. It is produced for the first few days after the baby is taking birth. So what we need to understand is this particular colostrum is actually low in sugar and it has high proteins. Because it has low in sugar and high in proteins, mothers need to give the baby this breastfeeding initially after the baby is given birth. So especially after the first hour, it becomes very important for the babies to be given this. So what exactly is the advantages of this colostrum? So what we need to understand is this colostrum has very high antibodies and it actually reduces the risk of hypothermia, helps in epithelial recovery, as well as protects the children from all the infectious diseases. And the most important point, this provides the numerous immunological as well as nutritional benefits that have been found to reduce the mortality in babies under the age of 1. And that is why colostrum becomes the most important point. And what exactly is the colostrum? It is that milk which is actually produced within 1 week after the baby is come into life. Okay, so apart from this, what exactly are the advantages of breastfeeding? So apart from this, what are the other advantages? It will help in reducing the serious diseases like the jaundice, and it will also reduce the diarrhea or pneumonia and other infectious diseases in comparison to the infants. And then human milk that is given by the mother to the kid has also the immune as well as non-immune components which resist all the infections as well as intestinal maturation in a child. So what we also need to understand is the fact that there are certain health issues of not breastfeeding. If the child is not actually breastfed, what can happen is it can actually suffer from various diseases, and some of the diseases will actually include asthma or diabetes or childhood leukemia, obesity as well as allergies. So what are the recommendations that has been suggested by the World Health Organization? So what the World Health Organization has actually said, because there are a lot of health issues that have been represented, the child has to be provided breast milk from the first hour from when the baby has actually come into life until 6 months when it is old. Compulsorily it has to be given this breastfeeding until 6 months old. Apart from this, nutritional complementary food should be added while continuing to breastfeed for up to 2 years or even beyond it. So what exactly how exactly can we improvise this particular breastfeed? So when we realize what exactly is the problems, we need to know what needs to be done with respect to improvising it. One of the basic things that we need to do is we need to focus on educating the women, at the same time the health providers. So these are the two major parts, that is educating the woman who is actually going to breastfeed, and at the same time the health providers who will give them the idea as to how breastfeeding is the most important point. So we need to give them that consistent awareness, because when you see what exactly is the knowledge level in the public, right, it is actually comparatively reduced. So there are these certain norms that are there where there is lack of lactation services, and the education for all these women are comparatively less. So what we need to provide them is the consistent awareness. So apart from this, we also give them to provide training to all the breastfeeding members, and at the same time we also need to make sure that all the mothers, sometimes in case they are actually suffering from some illness or something like that, these people should be avoiding providing breastfeed. But apart from this, all the other women who are actually capable of providing the breastfeeding should be providing breastfeeding. So the two important things is, one is educating the women, the other one is these health providers who are actually there should be providing them all the training that is required. So what exactly are the other factors that actually delay the early breastfeeding? Let's say for example a woman has actually gone through a cesarean delivery, or there has been use of anesthesia in order to make sure that there is cesarean delivery, and if there is fatigue or prelactal feeding, then all this will actually make sure that breastfeeding actually takes a lot of time. Apart from this, what exactly are the government initiatives? So when we look into the government initiatives, what we will realize is government has taken a number of efforts in order to make sure that there is delivery of breastfeeding that happens. That is, it has provided the number of initiatives. Say for example, the health ministry is planning to increase the network of human milk banks, and then there there is also number of programs to educate the healthcare providers and young parents on the importance of the human breastfeed for the survival of the child, and it is also encouraging a number of women to actually breastfeed so that they actually get the benefits out of it. So these are the some of the things that we need to understand. So what exactly is the conclusion bit? So once we understand all the importance that is of the breastfeeding, the larger society has to come together, the civil society, the government, all need to come up together. They need to provide the awareness, they need to give the information, they need to provide all the important things with respect to breastfeeding so that all the women actually take a breastfeeding. And this is basically to avoid the child mortality, and at the same time it also makes sure that all the nutritional support that is required for the child during its initial growth is provided to the child. So this is all we will have to know with respect to this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article, and that is to do with awareness. Genetic barcodes reveal 3 frogs reported in India. Page 9, center to spend 10,000 crores on Northeast, and page 11. So kindly go through this articles. This is just informational, that is it. Okay, so kindly visit the BYJU'S CNA, look into the practice questions both pre and mains, and put all your answers on the comment section so that we can evaluate and give you the relevant feedback for the same. So this is it for today. Thank you so much. All the best.